Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, and of course we have our co-host Mark Ronich on the right, and the town supervisor, which we're good friends already. I can't say old friends, we're not that old, because I'm 29, but we're good friends, let's say it that way, and again, welcome again to the Jewish View.
Thanks very much, Rabbi Simon.
Very good. Mark, do you have any questions to?
Well, I want to start off asking the supervisor. You've been in this position now a few years, right? I mean, how many years? 3?
1.45 or something.
Something like that. So, how do you like the job so far? I mean, what do you find challenging, and what do you find exciting?
Well, I like it a lot, and I do find it challenging and exciting. I'm a person who's worked in administration and finances and technical fields for some time, as you know, and I'm hopeful that that background is working well for the town. I'd like to think it is. Yeah, we've done a lot of things.
Specifically, what do you find challenging?
Well, the budget is always challenging. You know, you have taxpayers who want services, and yet at the same time we don't want excessive taxes. When I came into office, we had a very difficult situation, a $3.5 million gap, and, you know, on a $39 million budget, that's quite a lot. We solved it last year. We did a lot of cuts. We made some hard choices, but it's paying off. I want everyone to know this year we just did, our controller did a preliminary look ahead to 2014, and it doesn't look bad at all. The reason it looks good is because we did the right thing last year. We looked ahead 1-2 years. If you're always looking ahead and saying, what are the choices I make today going to mean next year, you'll never get into too much financial trouble. So this year coming up, I don't anticipate it's going to be difficult at all. Don't get me wrong, I'm still going to be looking for savings in every area we can, but it doesn't look bad at all. I think we should be comfortably under the 2% property tax cap. We are planning to return after 3 years to a modest cost of living increase for our employees, 2%. You know, that is something already negotiated with the public safety employees.
And what's going on with the deficit, though? I mean, if you're 3.9%, you didn't clear it all up in one budget, right?
Well, actually, we did pretty much. We did, and we looked ahead and tried to set a path that was sustainable, that was okay. It was $3.5 million, and we solved roughly half of it by cuts, and the biggest thing was the loss to the Selkirk Cogen pilot revenues. We made up most of that. Unfortunately, it did cause an increase on our taxpayers of about 8%, or $67, $68 for an average price home. But the good news is we're in the right place now. So I'm not anticipating any gap. I'm anticipating being under the property tax cap.
Wow. And
we're in good shape. So that's good news.
And you worked with the state budget, when you worked for New York State prior to this.
I spent many years in New York State, although the New York State budget outcome wasn't always as happy as ours.
No, I see that. But you brought in the good parts in the state budget.
I was going to bring a question that we were schmoozing, as you know, a Jewish term. I think it's English now also.
I've heard it, yes.
Yeah, schmoozing, and he says that, you know, it says, all right, we're doing all right, because, you know, I've read the reports also, because obviously I'm a resident, like to know. He says, oh, they made it up only under reserves, and now we don't have any reserves.
Absolutely not what we did. In fact, we adopted a policy explicitly for the first time last year that we would aim for a 15% fund balance, 15% of annual expenditures. That's considered a reasonable level for a town to have. In the past, we had done that, and that's why we often, you know, we were able to give the taxpayers good news. Oh, we have a 0.5% property tax increase or 1%, and it sounded good, but all the time we were living off our reserves. So last year was things really sort of hit the wall, mainly because of Selkirk Cogen. But, you know, spending down your savings account, say for your rent, is not a good policy. Your savings are for unexpected events. They're for big, long planned for events like college in the case of our personal budgets. But for a municipality, it's just not a good fiscal practice to live off your savings. So I think we're on a smooth path now. Actually, my biggest concern is that we not relax and, you know, no longer worry about making the efficiencies that we should make. I think that's still very important in good times and bad. That's our job as a governing board for a town like this, is to make sure we're efficient.
Will there be reserves? Will there be money in reserves?
Yes, no, we've got 15% in all our major funds. That's what it looks like for 2014. When we put together the budget, we'll look not only at that year, but also the years coming, 2015 and 16.
Well, that's great. So when you talk about the budget, you don't think that property taxpayers will see too much of an increase? It won't be like a $60 increase.
Oh,
again,
no. That was only to make up for the loss of Selkirk Cogen. You know, last year the town got less in property tax revenues year over year. That was the sad thing. It's no fun to ask for an 8% increase. It's particularly hard when you're getting less money as a town from that.
Yeah.
But last year was the big cuts year. This is a much more steady state budget.
Oh, this counts town budget.
Town budget, yeah.
Yeah, not state. Okay.
Did I say state?
Yes,
I'm sorry.
that's
I
okay.
worked there 31 years. You know, old habits die hard.
Well, you know, you brought, like I said, you brought over the good parts of working for the state budget, and you left the bad parts with the state, I guess.
Well, also
there are some dysfunctional parts of the state budget.
There are dysfunctional practices, but we're also fortunate in Bethlehem. We have good underlying economics. You know, we ought to be able to do this. If we're not doing it, then we're not doing
So
the job.
the public safety part of the budget, you know, the police department, and how is that? I mean, is that really taking a hit, or?
Well, last year, yeah, we reduced a net of 4 positions. They were all through attrition, and it was after a great deal of debate and you know, coming to a decision in the budget that we thought we could do with that fewer officers. We are hiring new officers now to replace other retirements and people who've just left, but by and large, you know, that was a sizable reduction, I think, for the force. It's not a big force, but I think we're in a good, sustainable position now. We still have to look at police overtime. That's an area of pressure. And
what's going on with there's no deputy chief? I mean, this guy Luke Horsey, who's the police chief, is, you know, taking on a lot of his schedule's like packed with one appointment after another after another. He seems to be doing everything. Yeah, in the department.
We like to ask a lot of our managers. Tim Beebe retired after, I think he served 31 or more years. I forget the precise number.
Tim
Excellent
was the
officer.
deputy,
Tim was the deputy chief. And first of all, there's no replacing Tim Beebe. There just isn't. He and Lou basically came in at the same time when the former chief retired. That was at the time a new position. So, you know, every time when senior personnel change in an organization, everything changes a lot of times, and I think you know this from the various fields you're in. We build the structure often around the people who are there. This was true of Greg Sagendorf, our highway superintendent, who retired after 22 years in the job, over 40 years with town government, and the whole structure was built around Greg. What we're doing now is working to make it a little bit less Greg dependent, shall we say, so that when we have a new highway superintendent in January, that person will have a reasonable management structure to step into.
Okay, so getting back to the police department, are we going to fill this deputy chief position or no?
We are working with the chief now, including myself, the director of human resources, and our controller on a number of issues, including management of the department. The first thing we wanted to do was replace the officers who had left, and we've hired 2, and we're recruiting for 2 more. These are entry level. Now, what happens in the police department? Everyone comes in at the entry level, and then all the positions up above are generally through promotion. So the chief and his command staff are looking and discussing and figuring out how this will be organized. It may not be organized precisely as it was in the past. It might be different. And the other thing, of course, we look at neighboring police departments and sort of ask, you know, is this a reasonable in comparison to them? So there's no answer, will that position be replaced just as it was, or will a different structure at the top be chosen?
But don't you have to set a line item in the budget for a deputy? I mean, it's a certain pay scale, and when you do a budget, don't you have to know what
you do, but you know, no budget sticks 100% to what it was. Since the budget, Officer Harrington retired in the middle, you know, people left, and we also haven't quite hit the overtime expenditures we were expecting to hit, planning to hit in the budget, so we have to look at it all together. So the overtime is lower than what you had expected? No, unfortunately it's higher.
Oh, it's over.
Yeah, it's over, and last year's was over too, so that's got to be an area of focus.
So what might go for salaries are going for overtime, in essence.
Yeah, it's not actually related, but they're different aspects. It can be, but there are different aspects in the budget that are compensating at this moment. So The most important thing is to get the department up to full force, which means replacing the people, and that happens at the bottom first, and that's what we're doing now. But we are working with the chief on this. Judgment hasn't been reached. We plan, actually, I've discussed this with the town board, to come back to the town board and give them an update sometime over the summer going to the budget, because you know, they are involved in the management decisions too, and if we change the structure of management, they'll need to get behind that.
Good, because I want to be there for that town board meeting when you do that, so I'll keep an eye out for it.
Absolutely. I'd expect August, either the first or second meeting. Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you about the community resource, school resource officer, DARE officer. There's a whole.
That was part of last year's budget. We had 3, in essence, school dedicated police officers, 2 school resource officers, one at the high school and one in the middle school. And then we had a DARE officer who taught the DARE program and did other things. When we looked at other communities, we found that really all of them did so with fewer officers. Now, that, you know, sometimes we like to do things best and first in Bethlehem, a lot of times, but when it comes to a question of resources, well, we have to make judgments about that. So the assumption in the budget was that we could continue to offer DARE with 2 officers, as most other towns of similar sizes do. But what happened since then is, well, Officer Harrington retired. We had another officer, Officer Rice, who was over at the high school. So now we've got one detective, Detective Whiteley, who is doing all of the jobs previously done by 3. Now, he's heavily overworked, needless to say.
So he's either getting overtime or the salaries from the other 2?
No. Yeah, I'm sure he earns some overtime, but, you know, he's just doing triple duty, more or less, or double duty at least, because we were planning to go down to 2. But honestly, I am concerned. He's a great resource. He's a wonderful instructor and well-liked and respected in all of the schools. But obviously we can't continue with one
I'm
person
impressed
doing it.
about how hands-on you are, that knowing about all these things that, you know, we didn't talk about beforehand, and, you know, you just are so in tune with what's going on. I got to tell you,
I'll
really
take that, but
by
luckily you're asking about things I happen to be focused on. But, you know,
I didn't know that, but I didn't know that either. You know, now what's going on with sidewalks that are, you know, there's all sorts of issues with Delaware Avenue, and
we have 2 proposals. I've made 2 proposals in my state of the town, excuse me, for capital improvements. One was doing the Delaware Ave enhancement plan, which would be fixing up the streetscape, parking, lighting, and everything else from Delaware Ave 4 corners down to Ellesmere Ave. That's a study that was done a couple years ago. I've never met a person yet who didn't look at it and say, well, you know, I'd really like to see that happen for our main street. Of course, money is involved. The original estimated cost was $2.5 million. We worked on it, got it down to about 1.9, on the assumption that the state government would at least cover the repaving of Delaware Ave because it's their road.
Oh, I see.
And we've talked to state DOT and they'll do that. So I think we're going forward with that project. The board has not approved it yet, but I plan to present it with the budget in September.
Now, there's a concept out there nationally called complete streets. And are we doing anything towards it? Complete streets?
Means that you accommodate pedestrian and bicycle as well.
And limited people with limited sight, and, you know, every type of walk of life is accommodated by these things, and you make the street look pretty, and possibly an island in the middle if it's appropriate, or at least go through and look at the various options that are available.
And the Delaware Ave enhancement plan is exactly that. It takes account of all those aspects of what we want our street to be, as well as improving the attractive Main Street aspects of it, which would build business opportunities. I think Delaware Ave and our 4 corners intersection, which we have a new tenant.
Center, yeah, we have to put a
that is the center of our town, there's no doubt. And even if you don't live near there, we all benefit from having a town center. Guilderland doesn't have one. Colony doesn't have one. Clifton Park is trying to build one, but nevertheless we have one, and I think we should take advantage of it. It gives our town an ambience and an atmosphere. It makes it a desirable place to live and do business. So I think it's very important. But you're correct in mentioning complete streets. Delaware Ave certainly does that. And whenever we do an infrastructure upgrade, we have a complete streets resolution. We were one of the early adopters of those principles.
So can you widen the street to make it more, I mean, because these complete streets, they need a lot of room.
Well, often it goes in the other direction, honestly. The wider, several things happen when you widen a street. You make it harder for pedestrians to cross. You generally speed up traffic, which makes it more difficult for bicyclists and pedestrians. And widening is often not the answer. What will happen in the Delaware Avenue enhancement is there will be carved out parking, so clear separation between that and the driving lanes, better separation between bicycle travel. There won't be whole lanes there, but there will be much better marking and access for bicycles, and better marking and access at intersections.
Okay, you'll excuse me, but they did this on Hackett Boulevard near where I live, and on the where they carved out places for parking. Now, I don't understand how they, and maybe you don't have the answer because you're not the highway superintendent, but you know, how do they plow into those little alcoves? And when it snows, you know, when they first did this, I was like amazed. I thought it was kind of silly and stupid, and I really didn't think it was the smartest thing to have these alcoves when it snows and piles up. And how do you get this plow in there to plow out those the parking spaces?
There are ways to do it. It's difficult. I'm going to resist the temptation to comment on Albany snow removal versus Bethlehem, but there was a famous quote from Erastus Corning.
He who puts it there will take it
away.
away.
The good Lord put it there, and he'll take it away in due time. We don't follow that in Bethlehem, though, of course, many of us are observant. But anyway, we have excellent snow removal. We have excellent street repair. And I can't give you the technical answers to how it's done, but it is done.
Okay.
And the better example, I think, although I'm not sure it was snow removal, is Delaware Ave in Albany. If you drive from Delaware Ave from Bethlehem down to Albany, you cross the border, and you go, oh, wow, look what they've done here. They've got nice lighting, they've got cutouts. It looks a lot better. They got a lot of federal money that we're probably not going to get.
Well, they were the first ones to be approved for the stimulus money.
Yes.
That Delaware Avenue project, they were touting that. They were the very first project approved. That was the Delaware Avenue.
It's a good project. I don't know anyone who doesn't like it. Again, we are, you know, as I said, we're better off than the city. I think we know that. So we're not always going to get the same aid that they do, but we are creatively trying to maximize any aid we can. And I think that there's a chance that we'll get some more aid for Delaware Ave. There's a new program that's just come out that we're going to look at. But it's something that I think is important enough. We should go through with it, and it will be part of my budget proposal. So will the Furabush Road sidewalk. We have something very few places have. We have actually a methodology, a rational, objective methodology to score sidewalk needs around town. We look at population centers, we look at destinations, we look at safety. And for a long time we've had this, what nobody else has, and said, look, Furabush Road is the biggest need. But if you never do anything, having a rating system doesn't do you much good. Furabush Road, as you know, along Ellesmere and Wemple, is kind of a development area. There's a lot of very dense development already there, more going into place. So having a safe way down to Glenmont Plaza is tremendously important. And there again, I am going to, provided our finances stay stable, which I think they will, I think we'll have plenty of room in our debt allocation, that it won't be an issue, and but I won't know until we get to the budget the full projections. As you know, my outlook is we always have to know not only can we afford it this year, but can we afford it for whatever the period is we're committing to, and we will do due diligence on that topic before going forward. But it looks good. All
right, great. So that's the side, and that's Furabush. Now you mentioned about Ellesmere. Now Rabbi Simon is very interested in what you said about Ellesmere because he's very.
We got to walk to the synagogue, but we actually. From our house to the Mount Ellesmere to the Four Corners, which is our new Bethlehem Chabad Center, it's just around the cemetery. They just don't have sidewalks. So I don't know if maybe it's, don't want to disturb the dead over here. You know.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing, and you can relate to this, I'm sure. You do have sidewalks on one side and crossings. Many areas of town have none. So kind of in weighing the relative needs, I think we have to look to those that have none versus areas that would like to.
Yeah, because we go and cross the streets and go around. I mean, it's doable, but
it's doable. I've heard actually specific complaints about Ellesmere and Kenwood, and kids cross the street to where there
You
is
know,
no
because
sidewalk.
especially they're going to middle school, people have to remember they're just about a few blocks away.
You shouldn't do that if you're watching at home.
Okay.
You should go where the crosswalk is. But I do understand the need. It's just, again, we have to weigh it to other areas that have none. And Furbush Road is unsafe
Terrible,
at any
yeah.
speed for pedestrians.
Well, I know we have a few, again, people that are Sabbath observant, they walk, and there's a few people who walk, and actually they had a thing, I had to walk to their house, and oh man, I'm darting around traffic, just to get down that Furbush. So I know what you're saying.
We want to improve, but I will say this, Bethlehem is very much a good pedestrian town, particularly in comparison to our suburban peers. We're not good enough yet. We have a long way to go, but we're oriented that way. We're planning to go that way, and I think over the long term it will get
And
better.
under your leadership, we'll get there.
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to...
I'll just let that pass.
Thank
but
you. Okay, you're welcome. Referendum.
We already mentioned it,
Yes.
kind of. We had a referendum that was put forth by the town board and myself proposing the elimination of the highway superintendent as an elected post. I knew from my state background that this can be a dicey issue. People tend to react, well, I vote for it now, I want to. But the board and I put it up because it had been recommended by several studies. There were budget savings of a material level that we wanted to try and achieve. The people did not.
So this is
Pass on
between
local
having
law.
eliminating the highway superintendent position in favor of having a DPW commissioner.
Right, we already have a DPW commissioner. We were going to give that person an additional
Right.
duty. There'd be someone under them in the civil service position, not
Right.
a new appointed position to handle it. But anyway, that went to before the voters April 30th. It was not affirmed. The vote was 61% no to, I guess,
39.
34. Right. Good, you're good with math. So it went down. It's kind of ended a number of years of debate. This has been discussed in town at least 10 years. And so we'll see how people like it going forward. It's going to be different without Greg Sagendorf. I understand there are several candidates in the major parties, and we'll see how it works out. People at least will have a competition.
Well, so now we have a highway superintendent and a DPW commissioner. Why not eliminate the position of DPW commissioner and just give the highway superintendent those responsibilities and save the money that way?
I would not advocate that.
No,
the DPW commissioner has to be a qualified engineer to oversee our water and sanitary sewer systems. It just wouldn't. I would not advocate going
Just
that
a
way.
thought.
It would
I
be,
just throwing it out there.
no, it has been thrown out by others.
Oh,
but the
and you
other
threw it right back. Okay.
The other thing about the electoral process, I think it's great for policy positions. It's democracy. We must have it for the supervisor, for the board. We elect our judges.
Right.
But for managers, I mean, that's the question: is it good? But the people have answered it. There is something to it. There's elective accountability. You return that call. You sweat the next election, and that was a trade-off versus managerial accountability and better combination of functions. I'm still going to try, and this came up during the debate over the referendum too, well, could you achieve, how much of these savings could you achieve without consolidating departments? Because we had no savings from the one position. We presumed that would be replaced. The savings were from combining the functions, so you don't have to have another person over here to answer phones, so you don't have to have, you can have two rather than three people managing fleet and doing other things. There were a lot of areas where we thought we could do savings without a separately controlled, there's some cost to that. But we're going to see what we can advance without that. We'll probably put it out there with the budget. It won't be as much as we were planning, but as I said, it's still important to look for savings everywhere.
Great.
And I'm going to keep doing that.
All right, you do that. I wanted to ask you about the new developments and the comprehensive plan and an update on that.
Yeah, we've got a lot of things going in there. I don't know if Michael Morelli talked about it last time, but for one thing, we have the Wemple Corners development proposals coming forth to the town board. We are having a hearing on that at our June 26th town board meeting. All of the information from the draft environmental impact statement is up on our town website. So if people are curious about that development, I mean, it's a lot of pages. It's like 500 plus appendices. So you're not going to read it all, but you can get a good idea of what's going on there. And then if you'd like, come to the hearing, tell us what you think, raise any questions you'd like to about the development. This is going to take a while. We'll probably be all summer and then some just to arrive at a final environmental impact statement. And then the town board will have to look at the question of, do we approve the requested rezoning. We're not going to do this without a lot of community input. That's the right way to make these decisions. It's my philosophy of leadership. And we're going to have, in addition to the required hearings, I also want to have another Glenmont Community Town Hall just on this issue. We'll do that sometime in the fall. And by the time we get to the end, I think everything will have been heard. The one caution I put out there, the town cannot simply say no to development totally. You can't say, no, we don't want this, you're not going to do it. We have to operate under the laws and court decisions that govern these things, and we will have many choices to make in this, but we don't simply have a free hand to say you can or cannot do this. People have property rights, etc.
Do you happen to know what time the Wemple Corners hearing is on June 26th?
6 p.m.
6 p.m. And is that town hall?
It's a town hall as part of our regular town board meeting. And let me just check the date to make sure I'm right on that. Yes, Wednesday, June 26th.
Okay, got it.
That will probably take up the entirety of that town board meeting because it is such a big issue.
I will be there.
Mark, you have a last question? We have about 2 minutes over here.
I wanted to know if you knew that on River Road and Retreat House Road that there was a Jewish cemetery, the Bethlehem Cemetery.
I did not know that.
You did not know that.
I did not know
I have something to show you that goes back to the beginnings of Judaism in Albany County. It goes back to the 1880s, and hasn't been used. No one's been buried there since the 1950s. But the Beth Emeth is a Reformed congregation in Albany, and they have Loudonville. They have a cemetery now in Loudonville that they've been using. But this cemetery is somewhat in a little bit of disrepair. Rabbi Simon's son, Rabbi Zalmi Simon, is the one who brought it to our attention, and from a constituent who lives nearby, and a resident who lives nearby, and I just thought, you know, that you should know about this. It's off of Route 144 in Retreat House Road.
It's on Retreat House.
Yes.
All right. Well, certainly we'd look at that. You know, Bethlehem and its many hamlets has some great historic places. We just created a Slingerland's Historic District, and there too there's an abandoned graveyard, and these are important elements of our past.
Well, this is huge history there. I mean, this is huge history. I mean, this goes back to the 1880s, and the cemetery, it's amazing. So anyway, we'll talk more about that. Stay tuned.
We talked about the hid, stay tuned, but we talked about the future, the present, the future, and the past. So I think we covered everything, even though I'm sure there's more to talk about. But again, thank you again, Town Supervisor Clarkson, and of course, Mark Ronich. And we always look forward to having you come again with even better news about our town of Bethlehem.
There's always good news about Bethlehem. Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you.